My name is Scott Ziegler. I'm the manager of product management here at Lapp in our headquarters in New Jersey, for North America here. I'm going to give you a brief introduction to Lapp. We're going to go into some considerations for continuous flex cables and cable tracks, just a little bit of technical detail. Before going into our Lapp offering and our new product, Olflex Chain TM, as well as cover some other new products that are recent innovations from Lapp, as we are continually looking to innovate and launch new products year after year. This is our founder, Oscar Lapp. He actually was the first to invent the multi-conductor oil-resistant industrial cable. So back in Germany, he found a need where they were really just kind of struggling, pulling individual wires, and he was really good at finding just needs of people and trying to come up with solutions for them. So it's a family-based company. Our family, completely 100% family-owned. So we do have a pretty big family tradition, and as I mentioned, since the founder, very great interest in invention. So again, as I mentioned, Oscar Lapp invented the first industrial produced control cable, and really, they say it says two-man, but it was really him and his wife, Ursula, who is still with us, and she was actually the logistics side of things with him out selling. So it was a true kind of a garage startup. But again, as I mentioned, we're 100% family owned. They are actually in their third generation of the Lapp family, with Matthias Lapp now being the CEO of our Latin America and our European region. So it's they're very interested in growing the business, and not very invested in it, since again it's all theirs. We have more than 40,000 standard products, 100 international offices, 17 production sites, over 3,700 employees, 39 sales companies, and 8 brands that we share globally. Just a quick look at our brands. A lot of people know us as Olflex. Olflex wire and cable, that was how they started in the USA. Over the years, we've pushed the Lapp brand more often, and as the company, and then our individual brands are kind of synonymous with the types of cables. So Etherline, being Ethernet type cable, skin top being cable glands, etc. And the products we're going to talk about today fall within our Olflex brand, which is where our power and control cables fall. And the other big push for us now is our Olflex Connect business. So as you can see, we have experience with populated cable tracks, and selling the cable track as well, but also doing complete assemblies, that can be just drop in place. So we do have expertise there with our Olflex Connect business. So really kind of combining and making the complete solution. Last year was, I think, the first year we surpassed 1 billion euro. We are continually growing, and we are looking to continue to grow and really, try and double in size as a company. But continuous growth. We try to beat the market wherever we can, and so far things have been, going pretty well for us. So getting into our continuous flex cables and the design considerations around continuous flexing and the potential issues that you could run into. Obviously, nobody wants downtime, so you do need to consider the cable as well. Wherever there's automated processes, you really want to choose the best cable for an industrial application. And it's one of the more critical pieces, but unfortunately not always the first thing that's thought about. We have seen people using cables that are not rated for continuous flex life, put into a continuous flex application, and then wondering why their cable's failing. The cable is the lifeblood of the system. They're vital to transmitting power and sending control signals and data across wide expanses in a timely and reliable manner. The wiring cable, in a continuous flex application is subject to enormous loads. So especially on some of the newer equipment, you've got more dynamic applications and faster speeds, different accelerations. So you got to take all that into consideration. Today, things are getting up to speeds of 5 meters per second, accelerations up to 50 meters per second squared, and again, varying paths. So again, to meet these demands, every component in the system has to be optimized to work together, and that includes the cable, the wiring, the cable tracks, how it's tied down, etc. So cable track or continuous flex cables, we call them chain, power chains. FD is a flex drag. It's more of a European term, but there's definitely different ways that you make a cable to survive that environment. So you need finer stranded copper. You need to twist the conductors differently. Obviously, if there's noise in the system, you need to have proper shielding, abrasion-resistant jackets. All of those things go into the essentially the life of the cable. And not all cable ratings are equal as far as how many cycles they're going to last. I'll talk about that a little later. But there's you got to take into consideration all factors. Bend radius, temperature, etc., when you're trying to determine, the cycle life of your cable. So there are many applications and markets for continuous flex cables. I mean, they're all over the place, whether it's machine tools, packaging units, robots, or one of many other environments. The feed and auxiliary axis of today's machine tools, for example, are equipped with cable chains. Packaging units, we got continuous flex, servo cables, working with the servo motors for precise positioning of maybe the gripper head, et cetera. And then we talk about robots, which obviously a robot cable is a little bit different, but then, we kind of say there's the seventh axis, which is that robot, sliding back and forth as it's performing various functions. You'll also see cable tracks and crane systems, stage equipment. You'll see it on retractable roofs for stadiums, car wash equipment, etc. Essentially it's all over the place. It'll be rare probably at this point to find applications where you don't need continuous flex cables. So we'll talk a little bit about, again, obviously the cable is very important, but the cable track itself is also comes into play. I mean, obviously, as you're looking into dynamic loads, the weight of your cable track, also plays a factor. Lapp has, significant experience in designing cable tracks as well. As I mentioned earlier, our Olflex Connect team can help you spec out a track if you need the track itself. But in terms of the cable, you want to make sure that your track is is designed such that, it can be easily reconfigurable if needed. You got to be careful with the abrasion behavior of the cables, how they're, the separators that are in there, whether or not it's touching, the sides of the track. Obviously, bend radius is a huge piece of it. But you want to make sure that, the cables are installed properly to avoid tangling and disruptions of your signal or power transmission. And, the other big thing is, making sure the wires are free of twists when installing them. There's recommendations for, allowing the cables to relax for 24 hours if possible. If that's not possible, then there's other things you want to do to make sure that you have, basically a top and the bottom of the cable, and that top of the cable is, positioned that way throughout the installation. So we talk about this because, again, we don't want cables to fail. You can see, different things here. What happens when you're, either your design is off or your, potentially the cable that you used was not the appropriate cable. So, for instance, you see the bend radius of the track being too small. When we say it's too small, it's not that you can't find a cable that works with that, but clearly this cable, the track itself exceeded its bend radius, the minimum bend radius for the cable, and kinked the cable. There's also travel length limitations for cables. You can see what we call a corkscrewing is something that can happen to cables if you exceed the maximum travel length. That's in the top right-hand corner there. And then on the lower cables, or the lower pictures, these are essentially your more robot type applications where they, essentially were using a continuous flex cable, which is only meant for the back and forth motion of a C-track. And this clearly had some torsion in the application, and, the conductors got all twisted up and kinked. So, we show these pictures, obviously, not that, we're trying to say our cables are, a million times better than anybody else's, but you just want to make sure you're selecting the right cable and design, in your design, and making sure you're installing it properly. So these are some images, essentially of some issues that we've seen with, cables not being tied down properly. You can see the cables kind of bunching together, not being spaced properly or symmetrical. So there's a variety of different things you want to do to make sure that your cable is going to survive in the application. And you can kind of see a little bit in these pictures why we're going to talk about the new product from Lapp. As these cables are coming out of the cable carrier, you got to wonder, where they're going. And, potentially they're going to a junction box somewhere because, you now want to go into a cable tray or something, and you got to use a different type of cable. So that's just a little hint of what we're going to talk about when we get to the new product. So now I'm going to go a little bit into the Lapp solutions. So not jump right into the new product just yet, but just overall, as I mentioned, there's, a lot of variety of things that go into cable design and, choosing the right cable for your application. So one of the big things that we talk about here at Lapp is performance class. We have 3 different classes of performance, our basic line, what we call our core line, and extended line. And these, as I mentioned, there's so many different factors that go into your life, but when we talk about the basic core extended, that's really kind of the performance of the cable and the life of the cable, how many flex cycles it can have. As you move in from these different categories, there's a lot of things that are, could change that will affect the performance of the cable. So we give kind of some basic ratings. We'll say, for instance, our core line could be 8 to 20 million cycles. But then you got to also look into the detail of that, because the travel length of the chain, for instance, could be, make a difference. The speed and the acceleration, makes a difference. If you increase the bend radius, for instance, if you have say a 10-inch or a 2-meter, for instance, bend radius, and you're able to double that because you have the space. You may get more life out of your cable than if you went to the extremes. So these are all the things you really need to take into consideration. The cycle count is also one thing you really got to be careful of. We have seen people not truly understanding their cycle count, thinking they were only maybe going to have 5 million cycles in a year, and meanwhile they're putting on 1 million cycles a week, and then again wondering why the cable is not performing to the the rated cycles, thinking they were going to get a year out of it. So the product line we're going to be talking about, the new product, is in our core line. It's the Olflex Chain TM and Chain TM CY. The CY is more of a Lapp designator. It's actually a little European, standing for shielded cables, and the type of jacket material that the cable has. So you'll see even in our extended line, we have a CP at the end, which is actually a polyurethane jacket versus a PVC jacket. C again standing for the shielding. When we look at extended line and extended performance, the abrasion resistance of the jacket material is very important. So we will typically go to a polyurethane jacket for your higher performing cables. Core line for the most part, though, is where we kind of say most of the applications are in terms of cycle life. So our new product, Olflex Chain TM, it's a interesting product from the standpoint of it's a continuous flex cable, but we were able to add a UL TCER and a CUL, or Canadian rated CIC TC. So you might wonder, why do you need a tray rating if you're putting it in a cable track? But as I mentioned, in that one picture, you could see, a lot of times the cables come out of the cable carrier and they got to go somewhere. So if you're using cable trays, this gives you a little bit more assurance in terms of making sure you're using a cable that your inspectors are going to be happy with. The cable itself comes in 18 to 10 gauge. It's a PVC nylon interconductor with a PVC or specially formulated thermoplastic polymer jacket. The shielded version is a 85% coverage tin copper braid. At Lapp, we use just a nomenclature for different ratings for oil, oil resistance, flex life, things like that. So we call this a CFO2. We have ratings anywhere from 01 up to 04 essentially. So 02 is kind of right in the middle there, up to 5 million cycles. Basically it's as I mentioned though, you got to look into your actual application, to really understand where your true cycles are going to be. So again, I mentioned the applications. There's a lot of different applications for continuous flex, but our other core line cable, the Olflex 890, is one of our most popular cables here in North America, and this one is just kind of slightly below that one in terms of performance. So, if you're potentially looking for a little bit more economical solution, or you don't have as much of a performance need, this is going to be a perfect cable, made right here in New Jersey. so relatively quick lead times to Canada. Again, you can kind of think about it too in terms of using kind of one cable for different applications, right? So, instead of buying two different cables, one for your cable tray and one for your track, you've now got, that solution in one offering here. So actually, one of the reasons why this product was developed, and you may experience that in your market, I know we do it in the US here, is that a lot of machines are actually coming over from Europe, and they're not 100% sure, exactly how the cable is going to be used. And there actually has been some confusion around whether or not AWM styles are okay in cable tracks, and whether or not that that track itself is kind of part of the machine. So it's basically giving you a little bit more assurance, or more acceptance by inspectors when they see a listed cable, versus just an AWM style. So even if you are just using it within the cable track and not running it into a cable tray, having that listed approval on there just gives you, again, a little bit more assurance. And then if you are running out of the cable track and into a tray, you have that tray rating. So you can use just the one cable instead of using, going into some sort of interconnect, as you're, changing to the different cables. So one thing that I mentioned, before about the different performance classes, we can rate our cables confidently based on in-house testing using our test equipment and our cable chains with a obviously controlled environment, but obviously if there is a need or a question potentially about a certain application and exactly how long a cable might last, or if you're having any issues with cables failing in the application, there is a potential for Lapp to help out with that and potentially work with you on setting up an environment where the test is actually being done. We have done that for customers in the past. But again, as I mentioned, your travel distance, your travel speed, your acceleration, your bend radius, all that matters in terms of the flex life cycle. So we're able to vary it from 3 to 55 meters, anywhere from 1 to 6 meters per second, 1 to 50 meters per second squared acceleration, and bend radius anywhere from 28 to 200 millimeters. So, we can test out the different environments if needed to see, how long the cables will last, or we, for our individual ratings, we'll test the cables to a specific test parameter before actually giving it a rating. So again, just to highlight, the different lines, how you're going to get, choose a cable, depends on your speed, your length, acceleration, and bend radius. Temperature does play a factor as well. Cold temperature is going to be a potential issue if you're working in say a cold storage facility or something like that with automated picking. You do got to take that into consideration as well. You want to make sure your cable is rated for has a negative temperature rating on it. We actually had one customer, not sure if it's around in Canada, but Friendly's Ice Cream, in their warehouse. The cables they were using, they were going to use, did not have a negative temperature rating, so they were concerned about that, and we were able to give our cables that rating, so they actually went with ours instead of the competitor. So again, it's something that you want to be looking for peace of mind. some of the things to mention, and obviously we can provide these, or you can go to our website and find them. But we do have white papers out there about dynamic load bearing capacity for cable carriers and cable carrier design guidelines. Some information for installation instructions. As I mentioned, the install is almost just as important as the cable itself being used. So all that stuff is available on our website, or anyone from our sales team can happily provide that for your reading enjoyment. You can see there on the left-hand side is a North American innovations brochure. This is something that we put together late last year before our new catalog came out in April, and I'm gonna go through a couple things that are highlighted within this brochure. So if you have questions about the actual continuous flex portion, please keep them for the next few minutes, and then we'll open up for questions after I go through this section. So one of the new developments from Lapp, if you know Lapp, or if you've used Olflex before, Olflex 190 is one of our most popular products for the Canadian market. We have upgraded this product to remove the nylon from the inner conductor. So it's now a more flexible product than it was before. And we've been able to upgrade the AWM style to 1,000 volts for the Canadian market. So it used to be 600 volt AWM style. Now it's more flexible and 1,000 volt. And in the U.S., doesn't necessarily affect Canada, but in the U.S. we actually are able now to use this in a cable tray. When we can get a CSA to approve our material for the inner conductor and the design, we're going to definitely jump on adding the tray rating to for Canada. One of the other pretty interesting innovations that actually we have a competition within the company for innovation awards, and this one actually won last year. It's our Olflex Servo 7 TCE. This cable is the first of its kind with a UL TCER rating and a CUL CIC rating for a servo cable. And when I say servo cable, I've seen some quote unquote servo cables out there that don't really have a lower capacitance design, which is something that you really want to have within your servo installations for your motor power and for your feedback. This is a true servo cable with a lower capacitance XLPE insulation. It also is available with a signal pair or two pairs with a 85% braid coverage. So I highlight this one also because it's a TPE outer jacket. Our large customer Ford requires TPE for their powertrain lines. So it's a good cable for automotive. And we do have a continuous flex version coming soon. So to go along with our continuous flex conversations, we are continually looking to develop newer innovations in the continuous flex area. Just some others that I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on each individual one, but our these are just 4 more, and there's actually many more that I haven't highlighted that will be coming soon in our different lines, and we got new stuff coming in our Ethernet portfolio. But some of these actually are recently launched. Some of them actually will be launched in the upcoming months here. The 409P was a new innovation in polyurethane cables, so really highly abrasion resistant, but it actually utilizes a layer of PVC underneath the polyurethane to help it to be more easily stripped. So it's definitely a good cable for harnessing, but even if you just need the polyurethane jacket for the abrasion, it's a little bit easier to work with. Our Epic MH is coming in the next couple months here. That is actually a modular rectangular connector, so you can have signal, power, data transmission into one rectangular design. We have our Epic MC, which is also modular, but this version mates with the Harding Hahn modular systems. So now you have another option for modular rectangular connectors. Our skin top glands in the stainless steel versions. Recently, we've obtained a UL approval on our skin top hygienic and skin top inox. And then we have a new multi-cable bushing system coming out that, excuse me, just sticks to your panel, and then you just push the cables through versus having to have a bunch of different hole punches for cable glands. I've seen this work really well for retrofitting cabinets, but it's also good for tight spaces where you're trying to route a lot of cables into a certain area. You don't have as much space for each individual gland. So the gel membrane seals around the cable. And there's a bunch of different configurations for different size cables and things that have to go through, whether it be, flat cables or larger and smaller diameters. That's all I have from the presentation side. Would like to open it up for questions. Happy to answer anything that you have if I can. If not, I will happily get you the answer.
Scott, the Skin Top Multi, is it available now in stock in New Jersey?
We have stock incoming. It should be here within the next 30 days.
Okay, great.
Yeah, anything that I talk about in terms of new products or products, we will be stocking in our New Jersey location. It's we don't typically launch them in North America if we're not going to have some stock availability.